Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, nice to be with you again. Um, Last time we ended without answering one question that I asked. Uh, then said we should reserve it for today. And the question was this: can one lose touch with oneself as a free being of pure light forever?
And so, yes, Charles, that's the question we left off with. For many of you, you may hear a little buzz with Charles because he's from China. He's from Cameroon in Africa, but he's in China, so he's got to go through a lot of filters to get here. In the past, sometimes we could hardly hear him. Um, so, for the fun of it, we left off with that question. Charles asked questions, and so we left off with that question. And so I was just curious if anybody came up with something in the meantime, or did most people forget it? Was there anybody that wanted to say anything before we go on with this?
I like to say.
Okay, here's Vesna. Go.
The question was something like, can one be separated from one real self? Differently phrased, something like that. So I want to ask Charles, then I will explain. Okay, Charles, when you make
Yeah.
soup, how do you make it? What do you put into the soup? Charles,
Yeah.
when you cook soup, what do you put into the pot?
Well, you put into the pot. It will not be uniform for everybody.
But
You
what do
put
you put?
you put into the pot at least the baseline is you put in some salt and the ingredients and whatever
Mm-hmm.
you have that you want to put in.
Okay. Which ingredients? Say three at least, or two, whatever. You
Okay.
put. You have the pot. You have the water. Yes, you have the salt, and then you put something else. What?
Yeah, you can put some spices, some ginger. You could put some garlic. Maybe you have some you have some meat or some fish. It goes inside whatever you prefer
Mm-hmm.
to cook to put in the soup, and then uh, some Maggi cubes or something like that. Some spices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay. So, okay, we all got it. We all make the soup differently, but nevertheless, we will use your example. So you said that one of the ingredients you put into the soup in order to cook it was garlic. Okay, so what happens with the garlic when the soup is ready? When the soup is cooked, what happens to the garlic?
well, the garlic changes from raw to cooked and may lose some of its potency if
Okay.
uh, than when it is eaten raw or anything like that.
Okay. So the garlic was something you put in at the beginning. So the garlic was part of the soup at the beginning, and the garlic is in some other form part of the soup at the end. Is it right?
Yeah.
Okay. So can the is the garlic now separate or is it part of the soup?
certainly part of the soup.
Okay. Can it be separate from the soup while it is in the soup of life? Can it get away from the soup while it is the part of the soup?
At this stage, it's, in fact, you will you need to separate every drop of the soup. In fact, I don't know what filter you can use in order to reconstitute the garlic.
Okay.
But,
And
yes,
every drop of garlic is in the whole of soup, okay?
yes,
Okay, so if you imagine that the soup is the whole of life and we are like those ingredients, okay? Can we separate from ourselves or we are all part of the soup? You see?
well, we cannot be separated from ourselves. But
Okay,
what? Yes,
we are part of the soup, huh?
yes, we are part
You
of
all
this.
list? Uh-huh.
We
Okay,
are
so,
part of life. Yes.
okay. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Yeah, but why I ask this question? Because um, what we call maybe lost in the religious community, you hear people say lost soul, and we reckon that there are many Utons in this world who are so deluded that we are not even claiming that we are so aware that we are already free. But others are so deluded, they are so immersed in this Maya, in the material world, that it seems it would take, I don't know, forever to get out. And then, so, okay, if you even look, even listen to them talk about the reptilians, they were once of a normal station in life like we are, and then they abused their uh, whatever qualities they had, and they have degenerated into the state in which they are. Yes, but they are still a part of life. But for how long will they continue in that state? So can can they just remain like that forever, or what? And there are
Is
many free beings of light, of pure light like that, who have the who have gone down the ladder of what I call it evolution, and they are in a state that is very unviable.
What?
That's not. They're in a state that is not attractive at all, and it seems it would take forever, or maybe never at all, to come out, to get out of that state. So what I want to ask Duane is, can can one be lost forever in this material world? If, for
Okay.
instance,
Yeah. Okay, young man. Um, all right. I just wanted to hear what someone had to say. And yes, again, the reality is life is an isness. Okay. And this is what most people don't realize. Yeah. Now that you know life is an isness, this makes everything a lot better than it was before, even in Paul's day, because that was hinted at, but the recognition and you might say the reality of it wasn't exposed. And what was exposed was exposed. Just like a child growing up with their parents and going through the process of kindergarten and school and all these things. They're not aware of, you might say, the adult world. Yet the adult world is there, but they're just not aware of it. And they can stay the child for however long. Some people choose that too. They choose to be dependent on others instead of at least getting to the point of being independent and self-sufficient in some way in this world as a start. So yes, and when you look at it, when you really realistically look at it, we've heard stories, lost souls and all these things. See, these are stories. And these are cliches to keep people thinking in a certain way is what it is. And this is the old idea of consciousness. And this is where, compared to the isness, the reality life is, doesn't work anymore. It's very self-limiting. And even though at one time it was, the big deal was, God consciousness. Oh, it was to, have God consciousness. Well, still, that's in creation. That's a created idea that exists. Consciousness is something created. Life is not consciousness. Life is an isness to be recognized. This becomes the difference. So in consciousness, we create things to consider. The reality life is the isness cannot be considered in any way. It cannot be considered. It must be seen and recognized and then perceived. The perceived part, when people use this word, I would say many times they don't understand. It's the word that I created from perceived, and that is that you learn to recognize it, and at the same time, you see what's taking place. This is the unique thing about what is taking place now. And it is like we're in multi-dimensions on the earth right here, many. And we see others, but they don't see us, you see. But we're here, and we're in our own dimension, you might say, those that recognize this. And so there are many steps. It's not just you read about it and it's like, oh, that's what it is. It's the isness. And many people think, he's Duane saying it's another word for God. No, it's not. It's its own reality. And creation is of a particular. So when Charles asks the question about being lost or whatever forever, that is choice. So in other words, what did we grow up with, most of us? The religious idea of, if you're a good person, you go to heaven, all right, and you can be saved and all these things, all the stories that are really fun. And then if you're not, then you go to hell, you stay there forever, and you burn in hell through eternity. Well, again, this is all marketing ploy. There is, but then again, there isn't any such thing as any of these, unless you decide it to be so for yourself. And even people that get into trouble and do a lot of dastardly things, like the reptilians that have done it for eons, they can get out of it pretty fast because it's choice, you see? So if, let's say, a reptilian that has destroyed for eons all of a sudden comes into this and decides, hey, I want to do the new you, and I want to recognize. It's not going to, all right? It's a matter of recognizing the real universes. Then life itself and the real guides will do everything they can to make it possible for that individual to do so. So it's not that a person stays stuck in something. It's just that through their choices, they're stuck. Is what it is. And until they become aware, and there's, just like the new presentation here, it's an opportunity, but the opportunity isn't always available. We need this. And so we need something here. And so when Paul brought it out, he used the spiritual idea, and that worked for those times. It doesn't work now, because now it's become self-limiting, because now the true reality is exposed. And what Paul brought out is it's more in the consciousness area. This is why those who are in the corporation with Joni and Harry and others, this is now you're seeing the difference. It's not about good or bad, it's about choice. It's the interesting part about it. And so, yes, a person can choose to stay unaware for as long as they want, and it will seem like forever, and it can be that. And so it's not dependent upon anything. In other words, again, this is the idea that we've been brought up with is that, okay, someday I'll grow up and my life will be okay and everything will be fine. It'll only be like that when you decide it to be and figure it out. Otherwise, it's not going to just come up to you and be like that. It's kind of along the lines of the old God idea. In other words, even though the earth is bad and things are really bad, well, God will save us. And everything will be fine. You see, an outside thing is going to occur that's going to make your life better. Well, in the personal sense, these things do happen. Yes, it does. The economy gets better from worse. And all of a sudden, yes, it's like, oh, we're saved because the economy is better. But realistically, the overall is that each one of us decide every moment what our life is and what to recognize or not. And so the created self usually comes first for the longest time until the individual gets to their real awareness. And so there is a difference between that and the old soul idea, you see. So, and you mentioned also, Charles, yes, I make the statement that we are already free beings of real light. Well, this gives the individual the opportunity to recognize what he already is, what the person already is, he, she, whatever. It's like saying that, you want to become the doctor. Guess what? You're already the doctor. All you have to do is recognize it. Now, the old idea is that, oh, you are soul. And, well, first came the idea that you have a soul. And this was the religion thing because they always use the little carrot in front of the donkey idea for people. And then Paul came in and said, you are soul. Okay. And so all of a sudden you realize, oh, gee, I am soul. Okay. So what is that? And Paul called it Tazu and all these things and described a lot of things. Realistically, he really didn't get into the real definition of it, so to speak. And it's like all of a sudden we are a soul. And that kind of complies. If you look at yourself, and those that were there in those days, when Paul mentioned that, didn't you kind of refer it to your personal self? You did, didn't you? Yes. You see, aside from the personal creed itself. So here I've come along, and I was shown to present the is and then the all is. And now there's been a upgrade, too, that probably most people won't see with the isness. But now it's your real awareness aside from your personal self and creation and the real universes. All of a sudden, it's not just the levels stacked up on a chart, but there is a definite difference. And the interesting thing about this is eventually it will all, like Vesna was saying, like the soup, it will all blend in again. So you go roundabout, but for the longest time, you will, for whatever it takes, you will see this. The reason that there is kind of a separation in a way, then it comes back together, is because now you have to recognize something as a comparison. In other words, you go through what life is not, which is creation and consciousness, which you've created, and what it is actually, the true reality it is, the isness, the all is that it is, and be able to recognize that. That's the most important thing, not just like, oh, I read it in the book, and it's like, oh, I know what the is. No, there's something else there, and this is where it becomes endless, okay? There's every new moment with this, and it becomes newer and newer and newer, and you recognize each one of these little steps moment by moment as you stand in it. And so, again, backing up to the question, could an individual or whatever be trapped forever and such and such? Well, again, see, It's not about anything except choice. That's really all it is. And so we've been brought up with the ideas good, bad, right or wrong, good karma, bad karma, all these things. I don't really talk about karma too much. I do once in a while, but I use the idea of cause and effect. It's a little bit easier to understand. So everything has been redefined to better understand also, using new references because the old references don't work. In other words, as people come in, it takes a few minutes to understand, but the new references work very well with the isness, where the old references, they don't work. Okay, and even people come in and they use the word spiritual and all that. I'm not saying not to, or God, or this or that. Fine, that's cool, or Ek Masters, or whatever. But realistically, what the isness life is, here's the idea. It's not that we decide what life is. No, this is what has been done for the longest time. Most people decide what life is. That's not how life is. That's like you deciding how electricity is. You don't decide how electricity is. Electricity is what it is already. You don't need to decide anything, and it doesn't matter what you decide. Guess what? You can't add to it. It's still what it is. And this is how the isness life is. There's nothing you can add to it or consider because it's already perfect, pure, and wonderful. So what is it you have to do on your part? You have to leap, you might say, from that literal personal self that you're so attached to, thinking that it knows something, and learn to recognize this reality and stand in it accordingly, you see? And that's choice. But for most people, their personal life is too important because they've created that for a long time and many lifetimes. So it's very easy to hang on to that. I'm not saying get rid of it or give it up, but it's a matter of how you decide to recognize what is real aside from what isn't and what is created. But yet it's all a reality all its own. It just depends upon what you agree to. And this is the toughie. This is a toughie for most people, especially. That's why the systems, that's why the cabal and the world controllers and the reptilians have created the systems they have, especially the educational system. They want people to be one-dimensional, literal, so they can be controlled. And you look at the public and how it is and how everything is out there and poison, polluted, microwave, and everything else. They're absolutely controlled, looking at their cell phones all day long. This is very important to them. That personal identity that has been created is very important, and they're more than willing to be robotized, you see? And so we're here providing this opportunity for people to wake up and see more, but that's a real challenge because that personal self is very important, and people still think, even with the world self-destructing, and that's in the consciousness too, and unconsciously, it is agreed to self-destruct. It's already on, it's already automatic, and who will wake up from that and stand up and recognize that there's something else? Most people are afraid. They've been taught to be afraid too. So yes, it's choice. So yes, people can stay, you might say, forever, okay, in creation, in eternity, or whatever. Foreverness and forever and eternity are in time and space. Endlessness is the real universes. They're endless because it's an endless all aliveness that's real. There is no life here. You have a simulation. It looks as though, and we call it, well, the body's alive or the body's dead, whatever. That's a simulation you're seeing. You're seeing a reflection. But you need this because this is the first steps to eventually recognize what is real. But again, you need the right knowledge too, which is now provided, where in the past it wasn't. And it's interesting as those of you that have come through whatever it is, religion, spiritual paths, or whatever. No, when you really recognize this, you'll see the difference, and you'll see all of that information in the world, all those paths, the traditions, the teachings, whatever. Guess what? You don't need any of it. You can use it as a reference, but as a reality, it doesn't work because it's in creation, and it's actually at this time, because of how it is and how controlled it is self-defeating and tap-lined. Just like the Hu, the the Amen, and all these things, and blessings and divine and all these things, guess what? It's all tap lining. It doesn't work anymore because the true reality life does not agree. You see, you need that backup, and the boys do not agree with any of it. People can have whatever they want. They don't decide. Life doesn't decide. You choose. You decide. You want to live in the isness, or you want to keep living in this created nonsense that we're experiencing right now. That's a choice, you see. So you can stay here as long as you want. You keep putting your personal self first. That's a choice you make.